Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, the Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Fake Teams Podcast channel. I am your humble host, constant doubter of Alvin Kamara, and believes every team would be better with Cam Newton, Pete Rogers, and I am joined by all of the guys. We have resident old man, the Doc Father, and recovering Texans fan, Clark Barnes, the working girl, Scotty Miller fanboy, and offensive line expert, Jordan Smith, and the ginger clean shaven man, political wildcard, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Good, Pete. How you doing?
I'm not going to lie. I am rather enjoying watching Major League Baseball self-destruct because the owners are a bunch of greedy assholes.
I used to really like baseball.
Yeah. And now it's just completely done itself in because the owners decided that they needed to. This is what happens when you have owners who don't even seem to like the sport that they own a team in. Like it doesn't, none of it makes sense, but I'm here for baseball to either get completely like rethought to make it a little more of an interesting sport to watch, because I don't have the attention span to watch 5 hours of baseball. And I'm also here for maybe Major League Soccer making a big play at becoming like the next new, next big four sport or whatever you call those top four guys.
I'll watch exactly the same amount of baseball this year as I did last year. So
nice.
But yeah, so that's how my day's been. That, and Jordan, this is for you because you're my only other cinephile here. I watched Da 5 Bloods last night, which was incredible.
I watched it on Saturday. It was very good.
Yeah. So 10 out of 10 would recommend if you are in the mood for watching a film, and it's on Netflix and it's right there for you. So hit play because it's good. And that's what's going on in the Rogers household.
Twister is on Netflix too.
Twister
last night. Blast from the past. Yeah.
Did they all survive?
I'm not giving it away.
Oh, okay. Whew. All right.
I watched the entire. Well, no, I too consider myself a cinephile. I just don't have to brag about it to feel like, I need to be validated. Watched the entirety of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series over the last week.
Nice.
It was a break from watching all of the Keanu Reeves movies that have ever been made, but we'll probably get back to that pretty soon.
Nice. This is a thing that Becca and I have started doing. Oh boy, Bert is all kinds of hyper right now.
Hey, Bert.
He is all kinds of hyped. This is something that Becca and I have been doing, which is watching trilogies. And so we've just like been bouncing through trilogies because we are terrible at, we'll basically be like, oh, let's watch a movie tonight. And then 3 hours later, we've just watched trailers for like all possible movies that we could see. And then it's too late. And so then we just watch TV. So picking a trilogy then lets you, at least for the next 3 times you want to watch a movie, you know what movie you're going to watch, which is a good way to do it. So we've been knocking through trilogies, and we started with Lord of the Rings, and there might not be a finer trilogy out there than the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
John Wick might disagree. He might not, though, because Lord of the Rings is fabulous.
It is. It is pretty incredible. So I also like
John Wick 3.
I like
John Wick 3 is great.
I like the entire Keanu Reeves discography also as a genre, to just be like, we're going to watch everything he's ever done.
No person runs harder than Keanu Reeves runs when he runs in movies. The fists that he makes.
Tom Cruise might have a word.
Tom Cruise, let's move on.
TC is just running. He's not running hard.
Yeah, he's putting maximum effort into going whatever 5 miles an hour or whatever. I guess 5 miles is actually probably a good pace for a human. Is it? I have no idea.
On to football.
I think so.
I don't know. On to football. We have one news bulletin, as has become customary. And that news bulletin is actually mildly important. Several Cowboys and Texans players have tested positive for the COVID-19, and including Ezekiel Elliott, which is obviously, you hope the best for them. This is something that I think is something to take into consideration, is just, first of all, if players are already kind of getting COVID before you have any kind of training camps or actual team meetings. Not a great sign. That's not great for the kind of hopes and futures of an NFL season this year, running at least according to plan. But also, like, if you listen, Von Miller had it and obviously has recovered from it. But if you go listen to kind of what he has to say about it, it is like the recovery process from COVID is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And he was talking about how he was having trouble breathing for, weeks after he had kind of officially beaten COVID. So it's certainly something to, be taken into consideration. And hopefully everyone, I know the only name that I read was Ezekiel Elliott, but hopefully everyone who is diagnosed with it hopes for a speedy recovery.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. It's really hard to find stuff that you can believe in the American media today regardless of what thoughts you're bringing into the equation. So a lot of people get COVID-19 and don't know that they had it and are just totally fine. A lot of people get it who are otherwise healthy and get like deathly ill. So I think with the NFL, we will get to see some unfortunately real life examples of what this looks like. I just hope that everyone that does get it recovers and that it has a small impact on the least important thing in the world, which is football.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, and again, Clark, you make a really good point with how difficult it is to get clear information. But I think something that people may have not thought about, I certainly didn't, was the long-term ramifications of just surviving COVID. The lung damage that can occur is, from what I understand, pretty significant. So I think that the NFL is really, I think they're gonna go for it. Like, they're gonna try to do this, and I guess I won't be surprised if the season just gets stopped. All you need is to be in the huddle with somebody, or to be like in the pile with somebody, and the teams, this could really spread like wildfire.
Right. And we're seeing like people, the NBA now had a tentative plan for how they were going to bring it back. And there's this whole bubble that they were going to create in Orlando. And now we're like seeing players being like, well, no, that's not really going to work. And if it does spread, it's going to spread like wildfire through that bubble. And Florida's, of course, like spiking on every node chart right now. So like, yeah, I think it's certainly concerning if you are someone like us who would love to see football happen according to schedule and on time. But like, it's concerning to see the fact that players are getting COVID before even they are really, playing on a field together.
Well, so tying into what I assume might be another piece of news here, Pete, is the Lamar Jackson video.
Yeah, Lamar, stay away from beaches, please. And thank you.
Yes. So, if you guys haven't seen it, go, look Lamar, just search his name right now. But he's playing pickup football on a beach and just runs into a jet ski in the water. And I mean, the wild thing is that he's doing that at all. That's kind of crazy in itself. But running into a jet ski might not even be the most dangerous aspect of what it is he was doing. Like, I'm hoping that everybody is staying safe out there and recognizes, and not to get too political here, but a lot of the reason we're going back is for economic imperative, not because it's safe now. So if you are going out, put on a mask, be safe.
Tight ends?
Oh,
sorry.
Question?
Jordan.
No.
Sorry, Jordan.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I mean, there's a lot to consider with bringing back a team sport like this, like much more to consider than teams are smaller, the staffs are smaller, and you can probably keep it relatively contained because you need maybe a couple of gyms. It is hard to come across just a couple of football fields unless you're talking about like the Dallas Cowboys training facility. But if they really want to open up and have people in the stands, at a certain distance, that's just tough. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of personnel on the field. You're dealing with a lot of people who just have to be in the stadium in order for a football game to operate. So I don't anticipate the NFL caring about the product as long as there is a product on the field. That might be something that they're probably considering if they are talking about, coming back, but with less people. it's kind of crazy right now. I don't want to dive too much into the logistics of the disease, but it does kind of feel like people just kind of slowly fatigue their way out of practicing safe practices. And it's not because the virus is eradicated or that the numbers are going down. So yeah, everybody just continue to keep utilizing safe guidance and protect yourself.
Yeah, I can't help myself. I have one more thing. So we are going to find, and I don't know which one of these it is, and I'm not making a statement either way. Either we were wrong and everyone gets this and it's not as big of a deal as we were led to believe, or we are going to see hundreds of famous people that we know get deathly ill because of this, because of the idea that you can somehow separate people from something like this is just completely
Right.
And have them play football is completely asinine. And I don't have any idea which one it will be, but I don't feel like there's much middle ground of which one it's going to be.
Right.
So
right. There's no way.
we'll
I don't
find
feel
out
like
soon.
Yeah, there's not a way to like play football and be like, well, like maybe just kind of everyone gets COVID. It's like either it's 100, like it's jumping into the deep end, or you're not getting in the pool. But
it's like a couple seasons ago. Was it the Patriots or was it the Buccaneers? Like a bunch of players got like MRSA or something from the
That
gym.
was the Washington football team.
Oh, there you go.
So it's like when you're with a team that size, like a virus or an illness, it's probably not the same thing. Again, not a doctor, but it just shows you how something like that can contract and spread among a football team.
Yeah. I can always tell that it's time to move on when Nick is looking very complacent, like taking a deep stare out into the future of life. That's when I know that we are ready to move on to football. All right. Well, it's our final deep dive week of deep dives. We covered the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, and now we are finishing up with the tight ends. For those who have never heard one of these shows before, 5 categories. We're talking top 5. We're talking who's going in the top 5 that won't be. We're talking who's a tight end not enough people are talking about, a bold prediction, and a number 1 target. Let's start with who we think are going to be top 5 players. Jordan, why don't you start us off?
Yes. So for my top 5 player, hang on, I'm pulling up my notes. It was on last week's notes. So someone I think will finish in the top 5. I'm going with Tyler Higbee here. He really started to take off in the last month of the season last year for the Rams. If you were able to pick him up off the waiver wire and plug him in, he was getting either 100 yards a game or like 2 touchdowns there towards the end. He was a pretty big piece of the offense suddenly. So it'd be foolish for the Rams not to kind of consider continuing to make him a bigger part of the offense, especially with letting go Brandon Cooks. Additionally, he ranks 3rd among tight ends in separation yards. So he's somebody that can get open, perhaps provide a few mismatch opportunities. And right now he's going 75 overall. So it's not an entirely like big sacrifice to draft him at that position. It's not like a 3rd or 4th round reach. I think he's just at a good position. And if he can sneak into the top 5, which, isn't incredibly hard to do at this position, as I'm sure we'll beat over the head several times during this podcast, I think that's good value.
Yeah, and I feel like we've talked a fair amount throughout the wide receiver discussion and just maybe in general about how much more effective Sean McVay's offense was last year when they went into that 2 tight end personnel, and why. And I think Nick, you were talking about this last week about why that might devalue Cooper Kupp's fantasy value. And so we saw it. We saw the Rams offense become a lot more effective when they were trying to basically figure out how to change their offense from that 3 wide receiver Todd Gurley look. And when Todd Gurley was no longer being as effective in the ground game or in the passing game, they shifted to a 2 tight end look, and Tyler Higbee emerged as along with Gerald Everett. That's the other guy. Both super valuable in fantasy. And you're right, Jordan, that Higbee what came on strong last year, and you're hoping that he kind of can continue to build off of that in this year.
So I think that Higbee, I think every year we end up having a few players that become pivotal one way or another. So like last year, Gurley was kind of in that mold and ran. But we get these guys where like flags get planted. Sometimes it's Peyton Hillis, but I think Higbee's going to be one of these guys this year. Like you said, he's going, excuse me, sorry guys, 75 overall. In half point PPR, he's 74, and he's the tight end 9 per Fantasy Pros. What's going to be interesting is who is operating as the top dog in the red zone, running the inside routes in the Rams offense, because that has been like Robert Woods is just awesome, and he does his thing on the outside. When Kupp has been hurt, he's kicked inside, but Goff looks to the dude running routes on the inside, running out of the slot, to be his number one guy when he gets into the red zone. And this is off the top of my head, so forgive me if it's wrong, but I am recalling Cooper Kupp as sort of that like 900 yard and 10 to 12 touchdown kind of a guy. Like his value, and he gets a lot of receptions in the red zone, but his value is boosted by this like the touchdown love that Goff likes to show him. And yeah, Pete, we did talk about how I think that Higbee and Everett will both eat into Kupp's touchdown upside in the red zone. But with that comes sort of this cannibalistic nature that I think could arise with now not just the arrival of Tyler Higbee, but also the arrival of Gerald Everett, where the Rams have not operated with a tight end playing receiving any significant attention on offense. Now they have 2. They brought this on last year sort of out of necessity with Kupp being, the knee starting to slow down with the ACL recovery. So I'm not sure what to think of him. I think that a lot of touchdowns are going to be scored with somebody running out of the slot this year on the Rams offense, but I think it's a big gamble. And I'm sort of interested in the Patriots backfield method of taking the cheapest guy, like just getting a piece of that slot production that's coming out of the red zone. But one thing that can't be disputed is that Tyler Higbee is, I can't stand him as a person, but he is an excellent pass catching tight end. So he is by no means a bad guy to plant the flag on.
Yeah, Higbee's out of the top 5, and I feel like something I'll try not to say several times is outside of the top 5, there are just a lot of guys that you can tell a story about how they're going to be good. Jared Goff's not good, so he throws to the good matchup that he usually has over the middle, and in the past that's been Cooper Kupp, and last year we saw that start to be Tyler Higbee just a little bit. Higbee is like another tight end I'm sure that we'll get to, who showed very well last year, and I just don't like, because I just don't like the team. And I find teams that I am just going to try to avoid unless the value is just overwhelming. And the Rams, outside of Cooper Kupp, are just kind of one of those teams for me this year.
So who do you think is a top 5 tight end, Clark? Give us your pick.
So I didn't have anything too spicy for this one without revealing what I have later. And yes. So I just want to say something.
I love Clark's tease now. I love that you've started this thing where it's like, I'm not going to tell you too much because, man, I got some doozies to drop later in the show.
Well, this may be a really stupid short statement, but instead I wanted to see, who is just the absolute favorite to be the tight end 1, and is that person worth a late first round pick? I feel like that's obvious. Obviously Travis Kelce, and obviously he is worth that pick. Am I alone there?
So I will say that I'm talking about Kelce as a bold prediction, so I'll get to that. But through that, I looked at his stats, and it is pretty incredible. His stats over the last, basically since entering the league. 2013, he played one game, so let's ignore that. But 2014, he was the tight end 9, 2015 tight end 7, 2016 tight end 1, 2017 tight end 2, 2018 tight end 1, 2019 tight end 1.
And nothing has changed.
And nothing has changed.
Exactly the same.
Exactly. So I agree with you, Clark. Despite, spoiler alert, what my bold prediction might be, that Travis Kelce, if you're putting money on who's going to be tight end 1 this year, it seems like Travis Kelce is by far and away your best bet, just because he's shown it time and time and time again.
And is that worth a late first round pick?
Okay, so I was going to circle back, Clark, and ask you what actually the question was, because I think I got lost there. But to answer that one, no, I'm not going anywhere near a tight end till well into my drafts. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with Travis Kelce being a lock for like 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. It just has to do with positional scarcity at the running back position. That's what's going to be the deciding factor for me there. But yeah, I mean, Kelce, his receiving ability and the offense he's in, it would be fun to think about a number of other guys in his offense. But yeah, he's in the perfect situation to just always be the tight end 1 or tight end 2.
My tight end 5, guy who I think is going to go into the top 10. I talked about this as my Carson Wentz syndrome with Carson Wentz when we talked to quarterbacks, where it's like every year you can talk yourself into this guy because you've seen it before, where you're like, oh my God, he's so good in fantasy. Yes, if he could just stay healthy, I am all in on it. And for me at the tight end position, this is my last year that I'm going to give Evan Ingram the benefit of like, God, if you just stay healthy, you're going to be so freaking good. He was the tight end 5 his rookie year, where he managed to play 15 games and finished with 700 plus yards and 6 touchdowns. And since then has not been able to stay healthy. Hasn't played a full season. Hasn't even really played, has played half a season last year. He played 11 games in 2018. So the guy's injury track record has not been great. But if he can stay healthy, he has the talent. We've seen it. We've seen that he can be a top 10 tight end. And so this is my final year where it's like, Evan Ingram, let's have all injury bugs out of the way. This Giants offense is primed for like a number 1 receiver to bust out of it. And I don't think that there's an incumbent guy there. And so I think Evan Ingram has plenty of chance and opportunity to see a ton of targets and become a tight end top 5 guy as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I can't run far enough away from Evan Ingram. And that's partially just to make Pete upset. But
I know.
This reminds me of kind of the discussions that we had when we were talking about the running backs. It's really interesting that we have Jason Garrett in New York now, because what it does for me is it pushes Ezekiel Elliott ahead of Saquon Barkley in the running back rankings. And Jason Garrett scares the hell out of me now that he's the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants. I just don't trust him. He's a total fraud. And I think that there's some troubling. You mentioned the injuries with Ingram. The troubling thing about the injuries is just that it's repeated soft tissue. Repeated soft tissue injuries are worrisome. I think he's extremely talented, almost like a Nick Chubb-esque situation where like everything should be there for him to do really well, but just for one reason or another, there are outside circumstances that kind of mess things up. The only other thing I'll say is that he's also running in a really crowded slot. And he gets to the outside some, but like Gettleman is just such an idiot. He brings in Sterling Shepard or he brings in Golden Tate to run alongside Sterling Shepard. It's like, okay, so we're crowding up the slot and we already have Evan Ingram in there. It's nice they have Darius Slayton now, who's going to be drawing coverage down, and maybe that'll help them out. But I think there's too many X factors for me to ever end up with Ingram on my team. It depends if he falls, but like I said, I'm not going to take a tight end for a really long time.
Yeah, the Giants are just a shade away team for me because there is so much up in the air, and I've watched Garrett coach for so long that he managed to hold down some really, really good players on the Cowboys for a really long time. I think that Evan Ingram is a really talented football player, and can I just flip the story and tell you about how great a season he's going to have because he's going to finally stay healthy, and Daniel Jones has already showed that he'll go to him? Absolutely. But again, outside of one player in Saquon Barkley, who is like 5th or 6th for me, which is like basically a do not draft rank. I'm just going to shade away from the Giants this year.
I don't mind projecting Evan Ingram to be a top 5 tight end. Unfortunately, I do think that he and fellow 2017 draft teammate OJ Howard might be a little bit in the same boat of these super talented, physically tight ends that just never really broke out in any significant way. And if I'm taking a chance or a gamble on a tight end, it's probably just, unfortunately, not going to be somebody who is the tight end 6 right now. I would probably rather wait until later in the draft.
I do like Pete's spicy take, though. If you can turn the 3 folks in the room against you, you know that you're on to something that isn't the norm. So that's good.
Yes, that's what I was going for. I'm always here to just share my opinion and then get shot down by everyone on the podcast. Nick, why don't you wrap up the top 5 segment?
Yeah, so I might have gone too nerdy with this one, but my selection is Mark Andrews.
Almost certainly.
I was really impressed with the fact that so per playerprofiler.com, he had a 43.2% snap share, which is ridiculously low for someone who led the league in touchdowns at the tight end position with 10 last year. Now, on the one hand, I think you could look at that. You could say, well, then we should expect regression because he played less than 50% of the snaps and was the highest scoring tight end touchdown wise in the league. But I think what we're going to see is just more snaps. Now, he comes in with a similar injury issue as Evan Ingram, but given that the Ravens come in, I don't have it off the top of my head anymore. They come in, I believe, with a top 10 passing slate per Warren Sharp, so that makes me feel a little bit better about it. But I just think like he's been at the top of the position in yards per route run in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Pro Football Focus proven that's a very year-to-year predictive statistic. And again, he only played 43% of the snaps. I expect him to kind of blow things out of the water here, expectations from last year at least. And the fact that Hayden Hurst is now gone, I'm a believer in Mark Andrews.
Yeah, he's going as the tight end 3, but so I think a lot of people are agreeing with that. But I do think that he is someone who last year was not something that was fluky at all, or that tight end 3 is like rich for him. I do feel like that you're going to have to pay up in order to get him. But I agree with you, Nick, that he has everything is in line for him to more than be able to live up to his high price tag.
Yeah, I think Andrews could absolutely explode and take over that tight end 1 area. And even though I've just exposed that I'm totally happy to take Travis Kelce in the first round because I think he's kind of a lock for that number 1. I have the same kind of philosophy of tight ends that I do with quarterbacks of I don't mind paying up for who I think is going to be the absolute best. And I feel like quarterback and tight end are 2 positions where the least value becomes available during the year, unlike running back and wide receiver. But for what you would have to pay for Mark Andrews, which is about a 3rd-round pick on best ball drafts right now, there's guys going behind him that I'd much rather have taken a shot on Calvin Ridley, A.J. Brown, even Juju Smith-Schuster, or Nick's favorite Cooper Kupp. Having said all of that, Mark Andrews did what he did last year playing essentially no time. So that is amazing. And looking at that, you could really see where he could just kind of shatter what we think about tight ends if he stays on the field for about 65% of the Ravens plays.
Yeah, I really like Mark Andrews. Invested a lot of dynasty stock in him during his rookie season. 43% snap share is just, you look at that number and you hear that number and you're like, yeah, he still has a lot more to like prove and a lot more opportunities to gain. So if he's finishing in the top 3 already by having to split time at tight end and just not being on the field, imagine what he can do with a higher snap share. So yeah, top 3 is pretty easy for him.
All right, well, so let's move on to tight ends who are being drafted in the top 5 who won't finish there in 2020. And I have gone through, I'm at fantasypros.com. I have looked at their best ball ADP rankings. I have looked at their standard, and I've looked at PPR and half point PPR, and all the same 5 tight ends are in the top 5. So no one can tell me they're looking at a different list this week. Top 5 tight ends going: Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz, Darren Waller. I dare you to tell me you saw a different list. And for me, the guy who's going to fall out of that, or is most likely going to fall out of that, to me, is Darren Waller is the obvious choice, just because of the fact that I think what he did last year with the Raiders was basically came out of the fact that the Raiders thought they were going to have Antonio Brown and because of that didn't really address other wide receiver positions. They had Tyrell Williams, but that was kind of to run side to side with Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown obviously lost his shit and was not a part of the Raiders last year. And so I think they were basically like, well, fuck, we need a number 1 guy. Darren Waller emerged as that. And so they just force fed him the football, and he certainly performed it, balled out. But I don't think that same level of work is going to come this year with Henry Ruggs there, with all of the investment that the Raiders have put into the offense this year. I just don't see Darren Waller being a guy who's a lock for a top 5 tight end this year.
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong here. Is this are we talking falling out of the top 5 or falling out of the top 12, Pete?
Top 5, just top 5.
Gotcha. Well, so it's interesting, and I'm not looking at his raw stats right now, but from what I recall, he racked up a ton of receptions and a lot of yardage, and just struggled a lot in the touchdown department. Cursory glance, I think would.
Yeah, he had.
I think he had
1,100
touchdowns,
1,100 yards and 3 touchdowns on 90 catches.
Okay, so to me, I'm seeing a whole lot of positive touchdown regression coming there. One thing we did talk about was on the strength of schedule episode with the Sharp Football stats, is that the Raiders have a really difficult schedule. They've got a really difficult slate of run defenses. They got a really difficult slate of pass defenses. But I'm looking through, and like, so many of these games are going to be shootouts. Carolina, Saints, Buffalo, KC. I mean, we're halfway through. Anyway, I'm going to end up naming all but like 3 games here. I think that the volume could be there for him again. The X factor, of course, we've hit this like every time we talk about this team, is Henry Ruggs. Is he going to be just running downfield, or are they going to scheme the ball to him? And that might be overall the number one thing that ends up hitting him. I think that he's got a good chance of staying in the top 5, but I think that this is kind of a fine pick to say that he's not going to finish in the top 5, just because the tight end position, to me, and I'll get into this more, it's just so damn deep.
Plus, let's not ignore that the Raiders went out and got Jason Witten for a reason. So clearly they didn't feel like Darren Waller clearly wasn't giving them everything they wanted out of the tight end position. I'm being deathly serious here. They are going to look to Jason Witten and force feed him that football, because Jason Witten can perform no matter how old or whether or not he's retired.
Wasn't it the Seahawks that got Witten?
No, the Seahawks have Greg Olsen.
Oh, I just got them confused. They all look alike to me.
Which, that being said, if Greg Olsen, I don't know if anyone's talking about him later, but if he stays healthy, holy shit, that's a nice little sneaky pick.
Yeah, I had a really hard time with this one, and Waller is one of the tight ends I knew we'd be talking about, so I kind of saved it. He is much like Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee in that he plays with a quarterback who is not good. And I just went back and watched a couple of Raiders games because I was really curious to see how Waller got all of his production. And it was because every time Carr threw the ball more than 5 yards down the field, it was to a covered receiver, and you could just see his little brain hating that he had to do it. And so that's why I think Waller might be a good bet again this year, because he is a good short yardage target, and he's got some legs. I mean, for a tight end, he can really, really move. He's definitely more of a receiver than he is a blocker. But I do think he or one other person in the top 5 that I may hit on in a second here is likely to fall out just as other guys move up.
Yeah, Waller kind of entered a situation last year where he was just the top option when he wasn't really expecting to be. So a lot of plays and a lot of passes ended up going his way. Darren Waller was pretty high for tight ends in terms of like yards per catch and yards per route run. So if anything holds him back this year, which falling out of the top 5 wouldn't be impossible, I kind of feel like the tight ends 4 through 10 are a little bit interchangeable. Like either any of them could rise or fall. And Darren Waller is like a pretty prime candidate for that.
Clark, who do you see? Who's your guy who you think is going to fall out? You alluded to him.
So this is someone I like, and at the price, I like where they are too. But I think it's Zach Ertz, just because he's going to continue to give you 900 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns, because he's, gets along with Carson Wentz well. And like the Raiders, the Eagles drafted a rookie that people were excited about, but that doesn't always translate to a lot of production from wide receivers. So the Eagles are hoping that Deshaun Jackson will be healthy. They're hoping for an Alshon Jeffrey revival. But what they know they have is Zach Ertz, and he did yeoman's work last year for them. But I'm a little excited about some other guys that may take a step forward this year. So I think you'll end up taking Ertz as the tight end 4 or 5 and finishing 6 or 7 and feeling like you left some value on the board, kind of for nothing, using air quotes there.
Yeah, I could see him. Go ahead, Jordan.
I was just gonna say my guy was Ertz too, being at tight end 4 and just kind of or finishing at tight end 4 last season rather, and then just kind of falling a spot or two. I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. I have more details and information on him later for my bold prediction, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds right now and trample over Clark's points.
Yeah, because I could see Ertz putting together, like in 2016, he finished the tight end 8, and his stats look great. 816 yards, 4 touchdowns, 106 targets, 78 catches. Like that's a really solid tight end stat line. But if you have better tight end play across the board, that's going to push him down. And that's just, if you're going to have other weapons now in Philly where he's no longer the number one pass option, or even if he's still the number one pass option, the ball's getting spread around a little bit more, similar to my expert Darren Waller take. But yeah, I like that too, as Zach Ertz is, because I mean, if anyone, maybe Nick has the stones too. Well, we know he's not going to argue Mark Andrews is falling out of the top 5 since he just made him his top 5 lock. But Nick, are you going to argue that George Kittle or Travis Kelce is falling out of the top 5?
No, Nick misunderstood, and he did the top 12. But if you'll allow me, maybe, I will say this is my first time, I believe, misunderstanding. But I hope that my take is bold enough that it makes up for it. I took the number 6 tight end, Hunter Henry, and have predicted that he will be falling out of the top 12. And I hope that's a big enough pick that it makes up for it. As to the Ertz point, I disagree. I just think he's the top dog there, and he's going to just keep putting up points. But I think it could happen with injury. He could fall out. So anyway, Hunter Henry, we spent a lot of time talking about the Chargers, talking about their strength of schedule. This shapes up to be a ground and pound schedule. They're going to play ball control. I think everybody, probably except for like Austin Eckler, is going to suffer. Austin Eckler is going to suffer too, but perhaps not to the same extent as everybody else. But they just have so many mouths to feed there, right? So if it's Tyrod Taylor as a starter or if Justin Herbert takes over, either way, you've got a guy who's prone to scrambling. Now, we've seen Taylor buoy. Help me out here, Clay. I've got JFK in my mind. I'm going to say Clay Shaw. Who's the tight end?
Clay, Charles Clay.
Kind of written off everyone
Clay
not
Harbert?
named Eckler and for the Chargers this year.
So anyway, my point is Taylor, he has helped. Yeah, thank you, Charles Clay, to a productive season, but he has so many mouths to feed there with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Eckler will command some degree of targets. I think it's going to be a real tough year for Henry because, again, I don't think they're going to throw the ball very much, and they have so many mouths to feed. So for me, my unorthodox or out of bounds call is that Hunter Henry's falling out of the top 12.
Yeah, I like it. I think Henry is an avoid, not because I don't think that he's good, but I agree with you, Nick. I don't think they're going to be passing very much. Their coach, a lot of times, Coach Peak is really stupid, but they have the QB personnel and they have committed to the type of game plan through their actions that shows they are not going to be throwing the ball very much.
Awesome. All right, before we move on to our final 3 categories, let's take a quick ad break. All right, we're back. We have 3 more categories. Tight end who not enough people are talking about. Clark, start us off. Who's a tight end that you think should be getting a little more pub?
So this is Narrative Street, and I like that it connects nicely to Hunter Henry. So Eric Ebron's not in Indianapolis anymore, and Hunter Henry's former lover, Phillip Rivers, is. I think we've seen some good play out of Jack Doyle, and he is going as the tight end 18 in the past month's best ball drafts. So he's absolutely free. And he's one of those folks that if you are going to wait on tight end, this could be the second tight end that you take for your committee that could really surprise us and put up a good 7 or 8 tight end finish this year. So I think if you're going to wait on tight end, you could do a lot worse than Jack Doyle as that kind of shot in the dark. Phillip Rivers has played and loved tight ends before. We'll see how it goes under Frank Reich. We saw Eric Ebron put up 13 touchdowns on 70 yards a year ago. So we'll see if something like that can happen again.
Yeah, he's the only tight end there now. At least that can garner some attention. They have Trey Burton there, but we kind of saw, or rather didn't see, what Trey Burton was capable of in Chicago. And they doubled down on Jack Doyle. They offered him a new deal, and he's always been like kind of that consummate, I will pick up Jack Doyle and stream him this week because my main guy is on a bye, which is very perfect for him.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent pick, Clark. Like I was saying earlier, the tight end position is so deep. There's this like top tier that's kind of unquestionable. That might just be like Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, and Ertz or not. And then it's just like this list of like 15 to 20 guys that I am more than happy to play schedules with. And we talked about again on the Sharp Strength of Schedule episode, the Colts are coming in with the second easiest schedule overall and the second overall easiest pass defense schedule. And some of these games are either going to be just shootouts, or I'm looking at them right now. Some of these defenses, Jaguars, Bengals, Texans twice, Raiders, Jaguars again. I like it a lot. And I think what was being talked about earlier on, where the touchdown position can sometimes just be buoyed by tight end touchdown equity. And I think Doyle, he might only have 400 or 500 yards, but I could see him giving you like 8 or 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, I like Doyle. I like that call a lot. I thought you were going to go with Eric Ebron as a guy not enough people talking about, who I also kind of agree, because the man just scores touchdowns and he's going to the Steelers offense, which could score just touchdowns. But I love Phillip Rivers' like connection with the tight end, and how now it's Jack Doyle's show again. And indeed he's going to score points. Nick, why don't you give us your tight end who not enough people are talking about in your mind?
Cool. Blake Jarwin, the Dallas Cowboys open.
Emphasis on the win, am I right?
That's why I did that part. Yeah. The Cowboys' overall schedule is it's just sort of middle of the road. Their passing schedule is a little bit easier. But last year, Jason Witten was the 10th most targeted tight end in 2019. Jason Witten. I think Blake Jarwin, he's a talented guy.
That's the talent going to the Raiders, you guys. That's the kind of talent going to the Raiders to replace Darren Waller. Just saying.
Yeah, that's what you should take from this. So regardless of whether or not the schedule is easy, which it is, this Dallas team is going to score a bunch of points. Now, I do think that the drafting of CeeDee Lamb definitely hurts Jarwin's touchdown equity a little bit here. But I think this is a group that's just going to be living in the red zone. And I mean, it's not a secret that for forever and ever, the Dallas Cowboys have enjoyed throwing to their tight end. So shootout heavy schedule, team that's going to score a lot. They like to throw to the tight end. Give me Blake Jarwin at he's coming up the board as I mean, it's one of those where you just got to keep scrolling. Yeah, tight end 21.
He's free.
Yeah.
I like it, man. I mean, if you're an opposing defense, who are you going to leave open? It's and that's kind of oversimplified analysis sometimes. But Dak has thrown to the tight end before, and I would spend a lot of time scheming around stopping these other weapons. Jarwin has shown competency, and I think he's in a situation where mere competency could end up getting him a huge season.
Yeah, I have Blake Jarwin as my guy that people aren't talking enough of as well. I feel like I've heaped a ton of praise on the Cowboys offense this offseason. So
Jordan is all in.
But I'm doing it again. Yeah, he's essentially a tight end that's going to be available for you in later rounds. He was 11th last year in yards per catch for tight ends, 6th in yards per target, and 8th in yards per route run. And again, Jason Witten is finally out of the way, which means that there's just going to be some good opportunity for Blake Jarwin. It kind of like Jack Doyle, he's another tight end that had their team just double down on them. He got a new contract in March. So I think that they are kind of ready to make him the tight end for the future.
Yeah. My guy who I don't think enough people are talking about, and he's not as deep as both of the guys we talked about, Jack Doyle and Blake Jarwin, are fall deeper in drafts. But the guy who I think you can kind of get in that middle tier, who maybe when you look at him necessarily, you first kind of have a strong reaction to him, but otherwise I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't, is Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins, who emerged last year. He finished with 570 yards and 5 touchdowns, and was kind of finally broke out in his sophomore season. And I think with Miami, the perk with that offense is that they didn't, again, for the receiving core, they brought in a quarterback, but that's it. It's still Devontae Parker. It's still Preston Williams coming back, hopefully healthy. And it's still obviously Mike Gesicki, who I think has now kind of solidified himself as a real viable threat in that passing game. So you're hoping with a better quarterback play of Tua that you're going to increase kind of tide rises all ships, as I've heard. So rise all receivers there. And also, I'm not entirely sold that Devontae Parker is going to put together as good of a season as he did last year. And so I think you're going to see maybe the target share get spread around a little bit more. And I just think Mike Gesicki currently going in best ball as the tight end 13, along with like Hayden Hurst, Noah Fant, Dallas Goedert, and TJ Hawkinson. I like him and Hurst of those groups as the guys who really could kind of give you a lot of value for the pick.
I like it. Not like that all the guys we mentioned are, unless you're playing in some strange league where you have to draft 2, or maybe a league where you really emphasize the tight end. These guys aren't even draft targets. These guys are all people to like keep an eye out for the waiver wire. We're well past 12 tight ends here. So
yeah, I like Gesicki's upside as well. He's a freak athlete for the tight end position, former volleyball player. He's got a ton of bounce. And I think the Dolphins were like, hey, you know what? We've got a ton of holes. We've got a bunch of positions to fill. They did that through the draft with a lot of draft picks. They signed a lot of players, but the pass catching position was clearly something that they felt like they had, a decent crew with as far as the wide receivers and the tight ends go. So, yeah, I definitely like Gesicki's upside going into the season.
So, Pete, let me just keep it rolling here with the bold predictions. Mike Gesicki is going to finish as a top 10 tight end this season.
Yes, I've got Nick on my side.
Yeah. So, it took him a while last season to get going, but he finished per playerprofiler.com with a 69.5% snap share. That's nice. That's starter material, and it is nice. But it's awesome that he just improved as the season went on. Only 34.6% of that was in the slot. He lines up outside quite a bit. He was the 12th most targeted tight end in the NFL last year, I believe. He had good yardage, good touchdown equity. I think that we'll stay positive just for a second. I really like what the schedule has to offer, either a smattering of easy defenses or just big time shootout potential. I think the one area that you and I disagree on, Pete, is that I want Ryan Fitzpatrick in there chucking YOLO balls to him all day long, rather than Tua, who I'm not sure how comfortable he will be right off the bat. So, give me the devil may care guy chucking balls to the 6'5" dude, as he's always loved to do throughout his career. But other than this, you guys have mostly touched on the rest. He's talented. If you heard playing with the boys just sort of come on in the back of your head, Jordan mentioned it. He's a former volleyball player. Super, super talented, super athletic. Like his position a lot.
And I feel like in drafts, I love giving myself the narrative or creating a narrative for players who I feel like other league mates might just ignore because of X, Y, or Z. And Mike Gesicki on the Dolphins, I feel like anyone on the Dolphins is an easy player for your league mates maybe to be like, well, do I really, outside of Devontae Parker, who's really on that team? And so I like being able to say like, well, actually there could be a lot of value here, especially if he falls in your draft because of the fact that people are ignoring him or overlooking him for maybe sexier names, despite the fact that Mike Gesicki of that group could be the sexiest name. His name literally has the word sick in it, so he's good.
How many of these do you have, Pete?
That's all I had.
Just one.
Just one. I know. I could have. His name is Mike. It has like in it if you put an L.
He's sexy.
He's damn it.
See.
Well, there's your team name. Mike is sexy. Oh fuck. All right. Well, I'm now drafting Mike Gesicki everywhere, and that's my my team name. All right. Well, we're already in bold predictions. Then Jordan, keep going. Take it. What do you got for a bold prediction?
Bold prediction. I touched on this before. I think that it's possible Dallas Goedert eclipses Zach Ertz in Philadelphia as the go-to tight end. partially because Ertz finished as tight end 4 last season, whereas Goddard finished tight end 10th. So there's not a whole lot of separation there. And that's kind of played out within their statistics as well. They were virtually the same for yards per catch, yards per target. Zach Ertz had one more touchdown reception than Goddard, whereas Goddard had a better touchdown percentage. If you are looking at both of their statistics, it kind of plays out in that it's the snap share differential. Ertz had better stats in terms of volume because he was playing more, whereas Goddard was kind of meeting him there on the averages, despite getting less opportunity. Now, this is total wild speculation, and what makes my prediction more bold is that this could be an opportunity for the Eagles to see what they have in the young tight end and want to slowly shift to him because they might want to get out from under Zach Ertz's contract by next season. This is an incredibly strapped team for money. They do tend to do a lot of tricky things with restructuring and what have you, but over the cap has them at $50 million over the cap next season, which is an incredible amount of money for a football team to be over. I don't know how accurate that is or if there's some sort of glitch going on, but that's what I saw today. Regardless, if they make Zach Ertz a June 1st cut, he would only be $4 million in dead cap space, and they could save or they could cut that down by $8 million, so they could free up $8 million worth of cap space. And again, that would just shifting to Goddard, giving him more opportunities than Ertz, or at least making them moderately more even. Like we talked about Ertz falling out of the top 5 if he drops down to like 7, and Goddard moves up 3 spots as well, 4 spots. He could definitely just take the reins and become the TE1 in Philadelphia.
That's a bold prediction. I like it.
Women's soccer hates Jordan now. Oh,
yeah, there we go.
U.S. women's national team does not care for Jordan.
I love Julie Ertz, who is a definite listener of this podcast.
Yeah. A known RB1 fan, Julie Ertz. We apologize.
And you say things like that. Unbelievable.
For speaking ill of your husband. My bold prediction, ignore everything I said in agreement with Clark at the top of the show about how Travis Kelce is a lock to be the tight end 1. Travis Kelce and George Kittle will not finish as the best tight end in football this year. Neither of them will finish the best tight end in football. Someone else will claim the throne this year. My reason is it has to eventually happen, ? I don't really have anything better than that. I think Travis Kelce is going to honestly take like an injury or just an entirely different shift in that offensive philosophy for him to not finish, number 1. Or maybe he finishes number 2, and maybe Mark Andrews just goes fucking balls to the wall and finishes tight end 1. But bold prediction is that Travis Kelce and George Kittle, the 2 guys who are basically like, take your bets as to who's finishing tight end. It's one of those 2 guys. Neither of those guys will be a tight end 1 this year.
Well, Pete, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'll tell you why Travis Kelce and George Kittle aren't going to finish as the tight end 1. I'm following up my hot RB1 take, my hot wide receiver 1 take with the hot tight end 1 take. Rob Gronkowski is going to finish as the tight end 1 in the year of our Lord 2020 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, disappointing all the Chris Godwin and Mike Evans owners.
So there's a lot of talk about Gronk being injured and broken down. I think we certainly saw that in the Super Bowl. But from what's being reported, I feel like Rob Gronkowski just didn't want to play for Bill O'Brien North, and that's why he decided to take a year off from football. Having rested and won his WWE championship, I think he's going to come back on fire. I don't think that he has to do that much to catch 10 touchdowns. So would you be at all surprised if Gronk got you 60 catches and 10 touchdowns? I sure as hell wouldn't. I think that we see a rejuvenated Rob Gronkowski. We know Tom Brady loves to throw to people that he knows. He's going to a new team and a new system. And why wouldn't he lean on his old friend Gronk to bring it home down in Tampa Bay?
This is incredible. This would simultaneously make me so happy because Clark's bold prediction came true, and so sad to watch Brady and Gronk like be the dynamic force that they were for New England for years down in Tampa Bay.
And I got to coin a new term, Bill O'Brien North.
And
I'm pretty proud of you.
Clark completely sunk Bill Belichick. Also active listener.
No,
of the
that was a
podcast.
Matt Patricia slight.
Oh, sorry. Got it.
In a very Howard Ratner voice, I disagree. I don't. One thing we didn't talk about in terms of tight ends here, and I think it's important with this position in particular, is to talk about the age factor. Generally speaking, tight ends kind of fall off after the age of 30. So I can see, and back to also Pete's prediction here, I can see Travis Kelce taking a dip from the number one spot just because of his age. He'll be on the other side of 30 going into the season. That he might be the exception, one of the exceptions to the rule, though, just based on his skill set and the offense that he's in. So Gronk finished, last time he played, he finished 2018 at the age of 29 being tight end 11. So having him come back after missing a season and reintegrating himself into the NFL, I just think that that's going to be tough for him to do. I'm probably lower on Gronk than I should be. I should probably give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but I am not going to say he can finish tight end one.
So I think that this is like definitionally a bold prediction. It's interesting.
And that's the only nice thing Nick has to say about it.
Well, I mean, this is one that it's just making me think.
Expectations. Clark.
Yeah. This is when you're getting satisfactory grades in elementary school, or whatever. I mean, so yeah, the team's going to score a lot. The Bucs defense is going to give him a lot of short fields. He's slimmed down so much. I think that they will definitely move him around the formation, which only helps in the red zone. I don't think Godwin and Evans are going anywhere, but that doesn't mean that he can't have a 10 touchdown year. And what's kind of interesting is again, off the top of my head, I believe his rookie season was like 550 yards and 10 touchdowns. And I sort of think that kind of thing could be replicable. But with everything Jordan brought up, he took a year off football. I mean, this could just be like Antonio Gates style, like standing in the end zone thing. And it doesn't work out. I think that it's maybe I'm just drawing it back to the Tyler Higbee thing, where I think that this is an interesting one to plant your flag on if you want to, but I think you got to be really smart with the way you do it, because you're going to have to plan on the fact that you're taking a risk with where you were drafting him at losing out on other draft capital. So you're going to have to know what your plan is for the rounds that come after. Like this, if you're drafting Gronk, you can't go into it and into the draft and just make the decision then. Like have a plan in place, because this is a lot of draft capital to be putting into this pick when he could be a total zero. I don't think he will be, but he could.
So I think what will make you feel a little bit better about that fine point, I want you to come over to my side, Nick. I like when we align for evil. Rob Gronkowski is the tight end 9. In best ball leagues, he's going off the board at pick 130. So I would contend you're not spending anything on him.
No,
this is the taking shots territory.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at redraft where he's 89, but 130, fuck yeah.
So I think even in the 7th, I still feel like that's close to free. But
okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think at that point in time, I'm still trying to pad that's your second flex option, or like your first guy coming off the bench or something.
Yeah.
But again, like if you win on this pick,
you look damn smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
We only remember the good ones here on the RB1 podcast.
Ain't that true? Ain't that true? Oh my God, incredible. Well, let's wrap up with number one targets. Let's just knock them out. My number one target this year, I like to draft my tight ends late. We've talked about that a lot. I think a guy who you can get late, who could be in for a good season, is Jonnu Smith for the Titans. We've seen him be very productive down in Tennessee, filling in for Delaney Walker when Delaney Walker was injured. And now that position is entirely his, I think we're going to get solid tight end, possibly top 10 production out of him. And he's going late enough that you're going to get good value out of that pick.
And I'm hyper athlete. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hop onto this one because we got the same thing going here. My pick is also Jonnu Smith. Last season, he was the 8th most productive tight end after the catch. The Titans threw to the tight end position 7th most in the league. Their new offensive coordinator who started last season, Arthur Smith, has been amazing. He's using play action at an extremely high rate, and he was a tight ends coach before that. So you really like to see the tight end coach then become the OC. Yeah. Anyway, Delaney Walker being gone, and like you were saying, Clark, he's a freak athlete. I don't recall where it is he's coming off the board. The tight end 17.
Yeah.
So in redraft and half point PPR, he's picked 141. I think pairing him with any one of the guys that we've already talked about, Gesicki, Goddard, Jack Doyle. Those guys are all going within 5 picks of each other in half point redraft right now. Pair him with one of those two and just clean up in the early mid rounds with running backs.
Yeah.
And wide receivers.
Jordan, give us your number one target.
Number one target, as always, is going to be Will Dissly. But no, I'm just kidding. I just couldn't go to the podcast about tight ends without mentioning Will Dissly.
Fair. Name had to be said once.
If I can get, this is more about strategy. If I can get like a Kelsey, Kittle, or Andrews in like the 3rd round, depending on how the draft falls, I would go for one of them. But otherwise, I'm waiting until later rounds to try to get like a Goddard, an Irv Smith Jr., or a Blake Jarwin, just somebody with a little bit of upside, see what I can get out of that.
Clark, wrap us up. Number one target, Gronk.
Yeah, so Gronk is my number one target, even though I wouldn't mind spending a first half of the 2nd round pick on Kelsey or Kittle, because I'm a believer in, locking up the onesies, but you're passing on guys like Julian Edelman, James White, Drew Brees to get Gronk. So I will break my one rule for the tight end who's made me break my one rule more than anyone else in my fantasy football history, Rob Gronkowski.
Beautiful. Find yourself someone who loves you as much as Clark loves Gronk.
Yeah, man. If Danny Woodhead would come back this year, I would just be happy as a clam in sand.
This would be the best year for Clark. Awesome. Well, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. We are there. Drop a review. Leave a question in the comments. We'll answer it on the show if you have any fantasy questions as we approach the possible fantasy football season. Follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. Follow myself at Pete M. Rogers, Clark at NFL Clark, Jordan at Jordan_Smith27, and Nick at Ginger_Nick without a K. We will be back at you next week. Until then, peace.